Hi everyone, welcome to the Eclair Makery podcast season 2. I'm so excited to have Chantel from Knitatude here, and we are going to talk all about how to work with yarn brands. Chantel has a ton of experience working with Lion Brand, and she's worked with them for a few years now, has a ton of kits with them, and so she's super knowledgeable. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Chantel, and kind of explain a little bit about your business.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Chantel. I run Knitatude and I design knitwear. So I started designing in 2016. Before that, I used to previously sell my own stuff. And I've been really, really lucky to be able to work with multiple large brands and also just brands in general that I've been able to hang out with and do really cool stuff with.
It's super cool when you finally connect with a brand and you're like, I've made it. I've made it.
Yeah, exactly. And they respond and you're like, validation.
Right? Or they reach out and you're like, me? You want
Me?
me?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I know a lot of people ask me all the time about how I got started working with brands. I'm sure you get a ton of those questions as well, since you have so much experience with that. How did you start getting involved with Lion Brand, or what are kind of the stepping stones for how you got there?
I am always a big fan of Wayne Gretzky, and he says you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So I reached out to Lion Brand. I didn't have them reach out to me. Oh my God, it would have been a dream. I reached out to them, and I took the leap of faith and just sent them an email, which most people think that actually collaborating with a brand is really difficult, but if you just reach out, chances are you're going to get a yes or a no. It's a 50% chance. But if you don't reach out at all, you never know if they have you on their radar, anything like that. So first of all, you have to reach out. But I definitely have some steps that I have learned personally, and I think are really really helpful for if you're wanting to reach out to brands. And I'm seeing any brands in general. Like if you're maybe Michaels is your top goal, or Lion Brand, or even an individual dyer, like an indie dyer. I feel like it's all the exact same kind of steps, and it's mainly to be professional.
Right?
Yeah, just be a business.
Exactly. Think like a business.
Yeah, exactly. And I always have this one saying that I think a lot of people, when they first originally reach out to me and they say, hey, I really want to start working with this brand, my first reaction is, well, why do you want to work with them? And they're like, oh, I just want to get free shit. And I'm like, if you're in it for free, you're free to get out. There's
Right.
if you're just doing it in for the free stuff and you're not ready to be able to collaborate with that company, because again, a collaboration is like a 50-50. You give stuff and
Right.
they give stuff. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. If they give you yarn, they expect something in return. It's
There's
not just we're
expectations.
sending you this and we're just hoping you make something. It's like a no, this is actually a thing.
And even if they do say, oh, we would like to send you this, and no expectations, there's expectations. 100%. Even if there's not written expectations, there's a wink, wink, there's some expectations.
Right, right.
Yeah, so I definitely say if you want to collaborate with a brand, you have to make sure that you have the right motives for it. And you just have to ask yourself a couple questions. So the way that I kind of, whenever I think of approaching a brand, I like to always, one, find out if it's a right fit. So I've got a bunch of questions that I ask myself. Then I prep my resume, and then I perfect my pitch, and then I reach out. And then if they say yes or no, I just chill out. It's not personal if you get a no. Take any rejection as best as you can. Know that not a no, that a no is not always permanent. It may change. Maybe they have something down the line that maybe they can't do at this moment in time, but they may be able to do it later on. As long as you reach out.
They usually tell you hey, it's just right. Work on this and then let's talk again later.
Exactly.
That was something that I ran into a lot when I was starting out, and then still see with some brands and stuff. And it's just taking that first step of putting yourself out there. When people always ask me, how did you make this happen? How did you get connected? I'm like, I reached out. I just took a chance and was like, you know what? I want to work with them. Let's do this thing. And then there we go. And it's like, you'll never know unless you actually reach out to them.
Yeah, unless you make that connection yourself. And like you can hope and pray that it happens, but you never know if it's actually going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to take that chance. And I would like to say that, like, I think that when it comes to, I think a lot of people get really nervous about reaching out because if they don't have like a big social media following, I don't think you need to have a large social media following to be able to collaborate with some of these really amazing brands. I definitely think that like it does help 100%. It's like, look, you have a lot of clout. You have a lot of people that you can market their stuff to. But I don't think that it's a be all end all. I have friends who have worked with Lion Brand that have like 200 followers, and it's just like they have their stuff and their ducks in order.
Yeah, and like, and I think it all comes back to like that first thing that you were saying of like, examine who you are and do you fit with that brand, because most brands have an aesthetic that they are trying to like. Yes. Like they stick to, like Lion Brand is one of those, they've perfected their aesthetic. So if you don't fit with that, then they're probably not going to work with you. And that was something that like I kind of had to figure out of how do I fit into that aesthetic with them, because it's I think when a lot of people start out designing, they don't really know who they are. So sometimes that's why you don't get connected with people till later. If you don't know who you are, then how are you going to pitch yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely think you're right, is when you are looking at another, like a company, you have to find out, like, is this a perfect fit for both your brand as well as their brand? Do you guys have the same like clientele? Do they have the same buyers? Do you guys, like, for me, I work a lot with Lion Brand, and I know that their audience is usually actually not my age, which means that I'm not going to be making as many crop tops because that's something that they are not a fan of, or maybe their main clientele is not going to be purchasing something along that line. So you have to kind of try and find a way of like, is it a perfect fit for your brand, but do you align?
Yeah.
I never want to say find your tribe because I know that that's like very controversial right now, but I think definitely finding your group that is very similar in aesthetics, that you guys have the same like-minded goals between yourself and the company. And then when you also are looking at seeing if they're the right fit, you also have to ask yourself, like, what are you hoping to get out of this collaboration? What are they hoping to get out of this collaboration? Because again, it's a 50-50 street. You can't just expect all of this free items, because PS, it's not free. You're working for it. You're essentially doing a lot of promotion for them. You're doing essentially Instagram marketing. You're being an influencer. You are doing all these things. So it's not a, sometimes I would say for a lot of the time it is a monetary exchange, because brands are starting to pay, which I am so glad for. Me too. Like, it's also with, like, you've heard of, I've heard of things called time exchanges, where, example, I had my tech editor for the first time. She did a time exchange where she tech edited my piece for free, but I also marketed her stuff in return, so that it was always an exchange and it was always getting a 50-50 type of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting when you're first starting out as a designer, and like the first time you get reached out to by, even if it's just a small brand, and that first instinct is to say yes to everything. Like that was something that I struggled with. I was like, oh yeah, I'll work with this little small brand, even though it's nothing related to crochet, but it's just a brand. And like having to realize, like, okay, who am I as a designer? Who is my audience? It, like, even looking at your Instagram posts or your different social media posts, like, am I actually getting engagement when I do something like this? Or is it pretty, like, not worth it? Like, for me, if I promote any other brand besides, like, a yarn company like We Crochet or Lion Brand, I don't get the same engagement. Like, people, it's just not what people really, in my audience, and I'm sure you encounter this too, like, they just want yarn.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go on and start doing like stuff for like fitness shoes, like,
right.
It doesn't fit my brand. Don't get me wrong, I would love to get free fitness shoes or like whatever, but I don't like it's just not going to resonate as well. And yeah, I definitely find that like if you are going to like my next step that I would always say is that if you find that like one amazing brand, well, let me backtrack. Don't ever be afraid to ask for money
Yes.
because there are a lot of brands out there that realize how important influencer marketing is and you should be getting paid. Like,
Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Like sometimes for that's something that's been interesting as I've been working with different companies, seeing, okay, this one doesn't pay at all, it's not worth my time. And like, okay, this one will pay me, yeah, that's totally worth my time. Because it's like, I think people, especially when they're starting out, they don't realize how valuable their time is. Like
Totally
like
agree.
especially if you make like handmade things, like, and are selling them at markets, you always undervalue what you're making. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
so
because we can make it ourselves, right? We
right. We know how easy it can be. And I think like with brands, we do that. We're like, oh, well, this is just my first time. Like, I don't want to try this. I don't want to ask them for money. But like, if you've made that connection with them, like you said, chances are they will see how valuable your time is and will
Yeah.
pay for it, especially if you're doing a blog post for them.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
Blog post, anything
yeah,
with video, like if you have to
yes,
edit anything, like that is multiple hours of your time. And if you're not getting something back that you like find valuable, and money should be one, I think it's definitely one of the things that bothers me now that I have gotten more opportunities is to realize that there are going to be certain brands out there that are going to take advantage of the smaller people by going and by smaller people, I mean smaller social media
yes,
followings
yes.
where they won't ask for it, but if I were to ask for it, they'll say, "Oh, that's not in the budget," but they'll go on to the next person that is going to then not ask for money, and it essentially becomes like this like cycle drain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even if
I
you always ask, be like, "Is there any kind of monetary attachment to this?" You can just ask. If they say no, then you also can make the decision of I hate exposure bucks, but like I just worked with a very large company that didn't pay me. But for me, the exposure in the long run was worth it because I knew that I would be able to get sales off of the followers that I ended up getting. So you also have to try and find out what is best for you. But one of the things that you can do is you can literally go online and just say, how much is my social media post worth?
yes,
And
yes.
then you can find out how much money you should be essentially making or essentially charging because it goes off of algorithm rates where it's essentially trying to find out how much engagement you have, how many social media followers you have. There's like things called like there's influencers, but there's also called micro
Yes,
influencers.
yes.
They're anything from like 500 followers to like 10,000 followers, and they're finding that people who end up having smaller followings actually end up doing better for conversion rates
Yeah,
because they have people that are actually following them and are super engaged in them.
right, right. And I think like how you were mentioning the exposure stuff, that's something that I was trying to work with so many different bloggers, so many different things to get exposure. And then now that I've built up my following, like with my newsletter, my blog, and my social media, and then now that I've started like running it myself, I'm like, wait a second, I don't actually. Hi. I can edit that out.
Croutons are your thing. Give me a shot.
Sorry, Todd is giving
Alright.
me a crouton.
That's okay. It looks delicious.
He's like, you need a crouton. So left us on a tangent.
Yeah. I like one thing that I found was I was doing things for exposure and then I didn't actually get anything. Like, I think going into something with that mindset, like, you might not always see that in return. Like, when I've done guest blog posts, I thought, oh, I'm doing this so I can get my name out there. And then nothing happened. Like, I didn't get any new followers. I didn't get anything happening. Wasn't paid anything. And I was like, oh, all that time was just wasted. Why
Yeah.
did I do that?
But you also never know where if it's like if you end up finding that perfect brand to collaborate with, you just like it could blow the roof off.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have no idea.
Oh, yeah. Like, it was crazy. Like, me doing a guest post for Make and Do Crew, that has been, I always tell people, I'm like, that is the thing that was totally worth it, because a Lion brand really liked the blanket that I made, and now I work with them regularly. Like, it was crazy of like, once you make that connection, stepping stones, like what, and then seeing, okay, wait, why did they like that? Examining that, why did this get me more exposure? And you never know what will launch that. But,
no idea.
Yeah, so just take a chance.
Yeah, definitely reach out is the best thing to put.
Yeah. So how do you recommend people to build a resume to work with other companies?
Yeah, so I always like to say that whenever you are reaching out to a company, you always want to prep your resume in the background. And by resume, I mean like everything that represents your brand. So for Knitatude, like that is my that's my website, that's my Instagram, that's my Facebook, that is my Pinterest, that is like my Ravelry, what my photos look like, what my captions are in all of my social media. It's essentially just trying to really make sure that your brand is something that they will want to be able to reach out to, or maybe be able to look into and say, that is clearly my aesthetic as well, and we should look up. I have always been a big, especially when it comes to social media, like make sure you've got your photos on point. Like it's the first visual that any brand is going to see. If you swear, example for me, I swear a bunch, but probably chances are is that a company is going to go to my social media feeds and they're going to see if it's cohesive and if I have like a good looking vibe before they read through 4 to 5 posts of mine to realize that I swear.
Yes. Yes. People are, especially if they're looking at your Instagram, it's only about the visuals. And then they'll look at you next. They'll get to know you after that.
Yeah, and you want to essentially look like a business. Like you want to look like a reputable source that they want to work with. This is where I usually tie back to, are you in it for free? Because there's so many people out there that are like, oh, I just want it for free. And I'm like, okay, well, your social media post is about your toddler, and most of them are grainy and dark, and maybe this brand that you're reaching out to is for like high luxury items. Like the correlation isn't there. And not to say that having like photos of your toddler or having just like on the go photos that are not perfect is not a good thing.
Right.
But just like maybe that would be a better influencer for like if you do have a toddler, maybe you're looking at something that has to do with like diapers or whatever, that make sure that you align. But essentially, it's just making sure that when they come back to you, that they want to follow. The same idea is actually what happens when you're trying to make followers on Instagram.
Yes.
You're trying to essentially reach out to the possible follower, have them come back, see all of your beautiful stuff, click follow.
Right.
It's exactly the same with a brand. You're going to reach out to the brand. They're going to come check your resume, and they will say yes or no.
Yes.
So I definitely think that you need to like make sure that you have your resume prepped, because it's so important. It's the first impression, and your first impression makes or breaks it. And I know it sounds very silly to say that it's going to lean on a majority of your photos, but it is.
It is. Like when I look back at where I started my Instagram, and I'm just like horrified that I was like, this photo's amazing. And now I'm just like, ugh. Yeah.
Like not centered great. Oh my God.
I'm just like the heavy filter on it because my lighting was
for life. What I'm saying, I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
you're like,
definitely.
You look back and you're like, why did I do that? Why?
And
How did I get here? How did I get here?
Because you grow and you learn. And I definitely think that like it sucks to say that photos are such a big part of it, but I think especially with it being like all of our like resume portfolios is mainly visual. It's something that you do have to focus on. And whether that's like going to your website and making sure that it's not in like bright yellow and red and like doesn't look like it's from the 80s, like
purple as your background.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like you can visualize those websites in your mind. And I definitely think that when you are reaching out to someone, there's a thing called a media kit.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, a media kit is wonderful. I also find that it's like when I was still making items and then having influencers so I would make like hats and scarves, etc. And then I would choose influencers to be able to use my stuff to be able to then market to other people.
Yeah.
And I would send them free stuff. And the amount of like emails that I got that I was inundated with of just like really, really like, when people would reach out to me, the first thing that I would respond with is, awesome, do you have a media kit? And a media kit is just essentially saying, these are my followers on this account. These are my followers on this one. This is the engagement that I get. This is my blog. Like,
here's a paragraph about me. Here's who I am.
Yeah. It's essentially a resume.
Exactly. And Canva, if you even like don't know what to write in a media kit, Canva has templates. It's free. You can just go on there. They have them for like all sorts of different aesthetics, and you can pick one that suits your brand, and it will have example paragraphs in there that then you just edit, so you can be like, what should I put here? And it will basically just tell you, put this here.
It's perfect. Like a media kit, if you can add that to any of your pitches, it will help you go so far. And then at the same time, if you say you're a designer or anything like that, and you want to get paid for that job, put in a price list.
Yeah.
Because then they have an idea of like, they're not going to lowball you. And then you don't have like the awful like thought of being like, okay, well, you offered me 100, but my minimum is like 250 for that type of item. And then you don't have that awkward like, ooh, I don't know if I want to take that.
Right.
You have that automatically that's just out there. And for me, for designing, I haven't found anyone that's like, it's very hard to talk numbers with other people because everyone's so protective of them.
Right.
Because there's like no standard. I find
right.
it's so hard. But you just have to go with your gut. And if you are, I would definitely include a price list in your pitch.
Never go below 200 for a blog post, because that is something that is pretty much timeless. It will, like, social media, like the price list I was kind of told was, when you first start out, don't have a huge following, do 60 or it's 40 to 60 per social media post, and then do about no less than 200 for a blog post. But if you have a large blog, you can always do it bigger.
I'm so curious. I love these. I'm so down for more.
Oh yeah. Pam from the Crochetpreneur taught me everything I know about stuff. She was like, don't do it, Claire. Don't go lower than this. And I was like, okay, you got it, Pam. And I do I need to adjust my prices just because I was looking at my old media kit and I was just laughing with my husband. I was like, I thought this was a huge number. I was like, oh man. I was like so proud of this number, and now I'm like, oh wow.
I could ask for more.
Yeah. But doing don't go below 60 for video. Just because always go higher for things that are going to you're going to promote on Pinterest or Google, because social media posts disappear very quickly, but website and YouTube, that has super long lasting marketing effect for companies, so they will be willing to pay you for that when you offer them that.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many things, and I like getting money.
Me too. I pretty much this year I was like, if no one's paying me, I'm not doing it.
I know. And it's weird to I know it sounds like kind of pretentious to say that, but I think it's also realizing that it's a possibility.
Yeah.
You're looking at people that are making a lot of money off of Instagram or off of being an influencer. And I know that there's a bad rap for the word influencer, but I find that if you call yourself an influencer, you're not actually an influencer. I feel like if you are a person who is actually trying to help and trying to give advice and giving honest opinions, that's when people are going to look to you and you have influence over them.
Right. They want to see the real you. They want to see, is this actually something they love? You can usually tell when it's not something that you use a lot. I have been guilty of doing that with random brands that I don't really use, but I'm like, hey, I maybe could make some money off of their affiliate program, so maybe I'll promote it. But just like if people see that you really love it, they're going to respond. Like,
exactly.
like that's what I've seen with like I only have one kit with Lion Brand right now, but because people saw how much I love that design and how much they love the design, they were like, oh, this is worth buying. Or if I'm like promoting, like I work with We Crochet a lot, and so that's something that I'm like, I love their yarns. I'm gonna share about it all the time. And same with Lion Brand yarns. I share about those all the time. It's like pretty much the two companies that I promote. But it's like when people see that, they're like, ooh, I think I want to work with that because they see your love of it, and they're like, oh yeah, I could buy that. I could support this person through buying through their affiliate link. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's always it's a hard process to like one, find the people that you want to work with, and then as well as like have yourself prepped and ready for them. But I feel like it's so much better to be really it makes you feel more sure of yourself, because it's always really nerve-wracking to be able to reach out to someone.
Right.
And especially when it comes into money. Like it's
so scary.
It's so scary.
Especially if it's a company you've dreamed of working with. And like my first email that I sent Lion Brand last year, didn't hear back. And I totally get it now. Now that I've worked with them, I'm like, yeah, what I proposed was not fitting with their brand. So they were totally like I didn't know who I was yet. And so I'm like, I didn't fit with their brand. So like, and they get so many proposals from people. It's like sometimes you won't hear back from brands, but that doesn't mean you won't later. And
just like keeping you on track for later.
Right. And I was so scared then the next time I like reached out to them, like when I was applying for the Make and Do Crew thing, and then that one I got an acceptance for that and it worked out. But it's like that first step of where you're like, I have dreamed of working with this brand for so long, and like even if you get a rejection that first time, it's still worth it to try.
Yeah, exactly. You have to try. You never know if that's going to go later. And I also think that that's why like a perfect pitch is like so essential. Yeah. Like how you're saying where you propose something that wasn't within their like what they were looking for. And my first thing is like, I'm glad that you just propose them with something. I find that there's a lot of people that when they pitch something, they'll be like, oh, I would love to collaborate. And you're like, how?
Right, exactly. And that was something that I learned. One of my friends, Amanda, who runs the blog Love Life Yarn, she has worked with tons of different magazines for crochet and knitting, like super experienced in the publishing world. And she has this like course that teaches you how to create a proposal. And once I started using the format of like, okay, I have a drawing here, then let me add some notes on it about here are all the features for it. Add a description, add what yarn and stitches you're going to use. Once you create something that looks really professional, that's when I started hearing back from brands, because you can, if they can't visualize what you're saying, like you can say, oh, I really want to do something with a shell stitch, and that's it.
What else?
What is it going to look like, though? What's the shape going to be with that? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because, like, I remember reaching out to Lion Brand for the first time, and I was very lucky that I ended up, I connected with one of their main social media girls, and we were really lucky that we clicked right away. But I think one of my first things when I ended up reaching out to them was, one, you introduce yourself. Two, you talk about their company, which I know sounds like you're kind of brown nosing, but trust me, it's so worth it. Where it's just like, because there's so many people that will send pitches, but like I can't, like the amount of times that I get emails being like, hey, Knitatude team, and I'm like, You obviously have never like you have to like kind of show them that you've done their like your due diligence. Like I think mine was along the lines of like, hi Lion Brand, my name is Chantel. I've been designing for this many years. I absolutely love your Lion Brand woolies, thick and quick. I've made it for so many toques. I used to sell stuff and it is one of my go-to yarns. And just that little simple thing is like, I know who you are. I know a product of yours. I know that I've used it multiple times. And you've like connected and made that connection with that company. And it's not just like a blanket like copy and paste. And then I went along the lines of being like, this is my idea. This was a chain link armored cowl. And I was like, I love the idea of essentially creating like a really cozy cowl that you'd be able to wear during the fall, maybe paired with like a plaid t-shirt, some ripped jeans, and some like shorty boot cuffs. I can imagine going and like walking through the leaves, crunching along with my 2 wiener dogs. Like it's just like, you're creating that picture and that emotion. And I was like, and the thing that I'm thinking, I'm wondering if you would be interested in giving any yarn support for this item. I'm looking at this color. It would be in woolies, thick and quick. It would be in, I think it was like charcoal. And I was like, this project would roughly take about 5 balls.
Yeah.
Let me know if you'd be interested. So one, you've like addressed them, you've told them a little bit about yourself, you have given them an idea without just being like, well, you've talked to them and being like, I understand your brand. You've given them an idea of what you're actually looking to be able to make with their item, so they're not just left being like, what do you mean collaborate, like make like there's nothing worse than reaching out to a large company and being like, I'd like to collaborate, and then they go, how? And you go, I don't know, what do you think? Like, come with an actual pitch.
Right. And I've totally done that. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, do this.
Like, do your homework and make sure that you're like putting an actual pitch together. And then I always think that when you're putting the pitch together as well, give them something that you can offer them for something that they give you back.
Yeah.
Because
don't be afraid to brag about yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Like that was something when because I applied for the Lion Brand, like Instagram influencers, designer program thing. Wasn't really expecting to get approved for that. They accepted me, and so now I get to work with them a lot more. But one thing I did is I said, hey, I get roughly 90,000 page views on my blog every month. Like I've got a huge blog following. And I've got this social media following, and I've also worked with Make and Do Crew, and we have a kit together already. And they were like, "Oh yeah, okay." They're like, "Don't be afraid to like, if you've got something great to offer, tell them
about it.
Tell them about it. Like you're basically interviewing for working with them, so they in an interview share your strengths." So
yeah, exactly. And know that you're interviewing them as well as they're interviewing you. But yeah, no, definitely like brag about yourself. Do that. Like even if you don't have a media kit, you can be like, hey, this is my Instagram following. This is like how many page views I end up getting on my blog. Feel free to check out. There's like XYZ. This is like a great blog post that I put. I would love to be able to like, if you want to get to know my writing style, take a look at this here. And it's just the idea of like, what can you offer them instead of what they can offer you? Because chances are, if you're just reaching out for the first time, it's probably going to be yarn support. But it's not like, hey, I want free yarn. It's like, this is what I will give you if you were to give me yarn support. And we call it yarn support, not free yarn. Because it's
ask the purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask for free.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think it's like trying to maintain that this, like you obviously know them, give them what you're trying to essentially pitch them, and then give them a reason why they should choose you.
Right.
And the biggest thing with this one is like how you reach out can make or break you.
Yes.
I 100% will say send a freaking email. Do not ever pitch a company through a DM, through a direct message. And like, don't get me wrong, I know
unless they ask for it, yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, like I know that there's like Like I remember collabing with from Jake from Is That Ken Yarn, and I like for me we talked back and forth and we were like good friends already, but it's still the idea of like this is like a professional manner and you should be sending it in an email just so that you have it all in like a paper trail. It's so easy to get lost in a DM as well as there's like if you reach out to so I just took over We Are Knitters this weekend. And I got to see, I'm not gonna lie, I did a little bit of snooping. They get like their DMs are chock full. And I would see someone go through and then like answer everyone, see that it had gone down to 0, and then go back in, not even like 15 minutes later, and it was like hundreds.
Wow.
There's so many people that are reaching out and DMs can be lost so quickly. And then you also have to realize that chances are the person who's going to make that decision on whether they would like to collab with you is not going to be the person who is running the social media. Chances are they have a social media manager and that person is only doing their social media and they're not doing their full marketing plan.
Exactly. Especially if it's a large company. Like if you're working with like an indie yarn dyer, then yeah, it's probably only them running it, but like a company like Lion Brand or We Are Knitters, like those have a team. Like it is not one person running that. They have a complete staff and like sometimes they'll like companies will give you like, oh hey, here's the email for this person. You can send your info there. But
Exactly.
Sometimes they won't.
Do you want to send them a DM? All you have to do is, hey, my name is Chantel, so Chantel Knitatude. I am wondering, I would like to pitch something towards your marketing team. Is there someone that you could give me the contact for?
Yeah.
And then you've like done your due diligence and if that person happens to be their social media person, they will probably go, hey, by the way, you're probably going to be getting an email from so-and-so. They reached out automatically. Or maybe if they don't, that person will come forward. Like maybe that marketing person will come forward and talk to that person and be like, have you gotten any messages from this? How is the response? And then go on from there. And then also my other thing is grammar. Oh,
yes.
Please, like you are pitching anyone, make sure that your grammar is on point. There is nothing that makes you look stupider than having bad grammar. Stupider, as I literally say a word that's not a thing.
No, is stupider a word now?
It's more stupid. I'm a copywriter. I literally write words for my whole entire my 9-to-5 job. But grammar is so important. Really, like as soon as you make a grammar mistake, it can really lose you credibility, which is really funny because I make spelling mistakes all the time. But if you are going to pitch a client or like pitch someone, have someone read through your email, have someone read through your media kit just to like double check because it is so important. Like
even if it's just your husband or your wife or like anyone, just like anyone, because if you work on something for so long, you don't actually see the mistakes anymore. And there have been many times where I have wondered if words are spelled correctly, if that is actually how you spell it, because I've stared at it too long.
You're like,
come to find out, oh yeah, it is. Like there as in, oh, it's their thing. Like I have stared at it sometimes and it's spelled correctly, but I'm like, there's no way this can be right.
Right.
There's no. It's just like the eyes start crossing and you're like, I don't know anymore.
And then by that point you're just like, whatever, just send it.
Yeah. So don't do that.
just save it. Just save it as a draft. Make sure that someone sees it and reads through. But yeah.
Oh yeah, and don't ever send a pitch when you're really emotional.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I have to speak to myself about that too. Of like, don't just be like, if you are like freaking out about something, or you're going through a hard time, like just wait a little bit longer. Like you said, if you've written an email, save it as a draft. Take a break, come back to it. Like they're not going anywhere. It's just say like even asking someone who's not involved at all in what's going on to be like, how would you say this? As someone who's not emotionally involved in this, how do we respond?
Yeah, what do you respond with? And no, and it's just good to have another set of eyes or just like another like opinion is definitely helpful.
I totally agree, especially if you're like going off of like don't do this if you're emotional. Also, don't be afraid to, I know that like when I've sent an email and I'm just like, I'm about to click the send button and I just freak out. I'm like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. But, like if it's the fear of sending it that's stopping you, like please press send. Like
yeah. That's why whenever I feel that like MailChimp one, it always bothers me that the MailChimp guy is like shivering. I'm like, don't shiver, you're making me nervous. Did I do a spelling mistake? Like, what did I do?
Right.
Don't shake.
Yeah, exactly.
Button.
Oh, totally. So what are some of the other things that you like? So we got the like, okay, examine yourself, see are you a good fit, then the resume, and then what is like after that, like what, and then like we've kind of discussed reaching out. What are some other ways that you recommend people do with reaching out to companies, or what are some of your tips for that?
I always like say to just go ahead and do it, but I think the main one is do your research. Like make sure that you are investigating that actual company. There's nothing worse than, it's the same idea as like when you go into a job interview and you've like sent off like 10 different resumes, but you can't remember which cover letter you wrote for this exact company, or you don't remember what that company does. Like something very specific, like
in a resume for, I think I was because I'm a business major, I was applying to do some sort of bookkeeping thing, and in the job description it said they want a detail-oriented person, and I said, oh yeah, I'm a detail-oriented person in my cover letter. Yeah, I learned I'm not through that cover letter because I used a Google template and I did not change my zip code from 12345 to my actual code. And I never heard back from them. So
it's the same idea of like when you're like, I'm gonna apply for this job, and then you have like another one that's really similar, and then you forget to change that I'm applying for this job for this company, and you literally applied to the wrong company with like, yeah, it's just like do your research. I think it's so crucial. It's so important. But yeah, like,
and even doing your research, you see if you are a good fit for them. Like
exactly.
That was something that like my dream for a super long time was I want to work with Lion Brand. Like I love their yarn, I love the aesthetic, but I had to realize, okay, if I want this, is this something that I really want to adapt my photos to be like this? Because that was my weak point, was in my photos. And I hadn't really figured out who I was as a designer yet. And so you have to think like, okay, is this something that I want to grow into? Like if you have that goal of being with Lion Brand, like does your photo style, is what you like, fit with them? And you'll see that if you just go through their social media feed, that is a great way to research a company.
Oh yeah, just by itself. And I think another really good tip, sorry, I just thought of this one, it just like brain farted out, is see if you can contact through other people. And be very, but when I say this, I mean like be very cautious, because people don't giving away their contacts easily. Because essentially, so the reason why I ended up reaching out to Lion Brand is actually because of Vince from Not Bad. So I ended up meeting Vince in Portland when we went on a trip, and he was like, I am just so surprised why you don't reach out to Lion Brand. And I was like, ooh, I don't know, I feel nervous. And he was like, and just with him simply saying, the contact that you're reaching out to, her name is Abby. And he didn't give me her contact information. He was like, you should definitely go through the same main channels to be able to do it. But having just that one name of being like, hi, like, hello, Abby, was one of those big things. It's not Abby anymore. She's gone. Just like,
yeah, no, I was like,
hey, Abby. Abby's not there anymore. It's Sam now. But just having that one little thing was really, really helpful. Another thing for me is one of my dream companies to work with was actually Pearl Soho. And I didn't get the confidence to be able to talk to Pearl Soho until Tony from TL Yarn Crafts was like, you should do this, you should just reach out. Like there's no point in you not being able to do that. So I'm now lucky enough to have a contact with Pro Soho, but I think it's definitely reaching and like tapping into your other designers. I think we're really lucky with having like Knit and Crochet. Like our community is not like any other community. Like the junior community is like
competition driven.
No, it's not competition driven at all, and it's really weird to because I used to do markets all the time, and all of my friends were like, I just don't understand. If you design something, someone else will make it and then promote it who's in the same industry, even though it's a designer. And I think that's something that's very unique and very very special to our community. And I think just like tapping into each other is really, really helpful. And just like not being afraid to it sounds terrible to say to use other people, but to kind of tap into them. And also if you do that, just like do realize that they are in their full complete rights to not give you that information if they don't feel comfortable with it.
Right, like sometimes what I will do, because people will ask me, how did you like get connected with this person? How did you do this? And like usually it's been through a designer friend who's been like, hey, you should reach out, who just encouraged me to do it. But I'll be like, okay, they've got this email, send the email to here, and like I won't give my contacts info right away unless I've just like sometimes what I'll do is I'll explain like, okay, here's kind of how they work when they reach out to somebody, or when you reach out to them. Like they've got a department for bloggers, they have one for yarn support, they've got it like social media, and so if you just send an email to this one, they'll connect you with the right person. And like especially I feel like I can't really give out anyone's info for Lion Brand because I'm like I'm like, no, don't.
I know, but it's like it's an actual contact information, and I think as soon as you end up doing that, it also means that you're putting your neck out for that person.
Exactly.
Which if you don't know who that person is, like the amount of people that have been like, what's Lion Brand's contact information? I'm like, I don't know you well enough to be able to like give you that. Sure, we are like acquaintances, but it still needs to go through the exact same channels. My best friend reached out to Lion Brand, and I was like, do exactly what I did and go through like, and P.S. if you ever want to reach out to Lion Brand, go to their contact page.
It's yes, they have a contact page. Use Google for any company, say like Lion Brand yarn support or We Crochet yarn support, and chances are they have a page for it.
Yeah, they'll ladder you through to the right people, and yeah, it's not as like nerve-wracking, but yeah, I don't know. I'm always like if you don't reach out, you're never gonna hear. That's like, and also again, if you do get a no, it's okay.
Yeah, and you might even realize like, oh, that was good in that moment. Like, it didn't fit where I was at. Like, I look at where I was a year ago compared to where I am now, and like I've even like been going through a lot of my old patterns recently and seeing like I had no idea who I was as a designer a year ago. Oh, now I've got a niche, and now I know who I am, so I can be more confident. And like I think that like what we were saying about how your Instagram profile is kind of your resume, like that kind of shows once you get into a groove, people start recognizing your photos. They can start telling your style, and that will reflect with companies. Like they'll be able to tell if you don't know who you are as a designer. And I think a lot of them could tell that I didn't know who I was, and now that they're like, oh yeah, she does the same thing. It's different designs, but it's the same niche. It was good that I didn't connect with them before.
Because you also don't want to have it where you connect with them before and then all of a sudden you're doing something that you hate.
Yes.
Like, I swear, I always said no to doing, I don't know why, I don't know if it was just like really popular at the time, but like cow hats and mermaid tails are just like not my jam. And I just imagine if I would have done that like you never know if that one thing that you absolutely despise making is going to be the thing that goes viral. And then you're stuck.
It is so true. Like, so I got started, like the thing that got me connected with Lion Brand was me making blankets. And so now I'm like known as the blanket person. I'm like, I don't want to be known as the blanket person, but I'm like, okay, if it's making you money, I guess I'll do it. But like, it's always the random thing that you just like make without any thought that will go viral. Like, I've had tons of patterns I've worked so hard on, don't have any effect. Like, it's just a flop, and you're like, really? I spent so long. I thought it was gonna be amazing, and then it's just like that one thing. Like my ribbon candy blanket I made with Bernat blanket yarn. It's just the lemon peel stitch in crochet with just any change for stripes, and that is one of my most popular patterns. I'm like, why this one?
I don't know why, but for me, it's my March and April patterns that like skyrocket. Like I have my beginner raglan, and that was like I came up with that design in like I finished it like completely started, finished, wrote it in like 4 days.
That's amazing.
And I like pooped that out of my butt. And then my easy eyelet yoke, same thing. My wrap me up sweater scarf is blowing up on TikTok, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, you're like, and then I always will look at those patterns and I'll be like, what was the
how do I recreate it?
How do I redo this? I can't figure it out. Why is this so popular? And then then if you are able to figure it out and then you try it again and you're like, it's working. But usually it's like, oh, I didn't get it right.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, no.
Like, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, yoke photos, like circular yoke photos, people really like those.
I am so jealous of crocheters being able to pull out a yoke photo whenever you want, because for a knitter, you have to like take like 8 different stupid like needles to get it completely out. It's so annoying.
That's true. I know. That's why I'm like, people will ask me all the time, like, do I knit? And I will just be like, I mean, yes, technically I can knit. That was what I first learned with, but I just like crochet. I like the freedom to be able to try on my garment as I'm making it, no matter what style I'm doing. Like, I'm like, I just need that.
I just gotta put it on more needles. Put on more needles. Ugh. We went on a tangent, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sure any crocheter who's watching this or knitter gets it. They get that.
So we're like trying to find that one thing, and I'm like, what is that magic thing? How do I recreate it?
Right, and I think that's something that, like, tying it back into working with companies, I think that's something that I struggled with a lot. Was I saw these designers doing things and I compared myself to them right away and was like, okay, I only have 1,000 followers. I should already have 20,000. Like, and putting that pressure on yourself to be there when you're not, like, and thinking, I really want to work with this company. I should already be at that point. And having to learn, like, it's okay if it takes you longer, and like you don't need to replicate what someone else is doing in order to have success.
Yes, exactly. You have to realize that you're going to find your own thing that makes you unique, and that is why a company is going to want to work with you, because you don't want to be like everyone else because they already have someone that already does that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy how once you find that thing that makes you uniquely you, how you're able to work with more brands, you're able to connect with more designers. Like, when you know what you have to offer, they will see that. And I wish that I could stop the comparison game in my head all the time. It's so hard.
I cried last week. And it's so terrible to say, but like, I think like I'm one of those people, I'm in the same boat where I like look at one person and I fixate on them, and then like I just beat myself up for them over and over and over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden they'll like completely surpass me, and I'm like, it's fine, whatever. I can't catch up anymore. And then I find another person to completely fixate on, which is
I do that too, especially if you like know they started at the same point as you. Like, if you started at the same time, then you're like, why did you get there faster? Or I've been doing this longer. Why are you there?
I know. I always have to laugh because I remember like so I'm really good friends with Tony from TL Yarn Crafts. Like we talk every day. And I remember being like, oh, we're both at like 16K, 17K. And like jumped to like 20K and I was like, okay, I got We Are Knitters, and then I just like jumped to 20K and then she's like at 80 and I was like, okay, I'm screwed.
Okay, Tony, I love her so much and I love her photos. I'm always like, I kind of looked at her style, and her and Lee from Coco Crochet Lee, like those are my two like people, and you too, because I love your photos. I'm always like, what are they doing? How can I make this happen? Okay, they did this. Okay, maybe I can recreate that. Why didn't it work for me?
I know. It's just the comparison game is so brutal, and it happens to everyone. Like that's just it. And whenever I think of Instagram, I always think to myself that Instagram, when I first started, was way easier than it is now.
Oh God, yeah. Even when I started like a year and a half ago, way easier than it is now. Like, especially with the pandemic happening right now, and it's so hard to get photos seen and get likes and do anything. It's just, it is hard.
It's hard. It's extremely hard.
Really hard. And that's something that I've had to learn too, is what is actually the platform that
fits best for you,
that's meant for me and that I need to focus on, and like that I can build up my numbers enough to work with a brand. And like, okay, yeah, now I almost have 11,000 followers on Instagram. Like I've been able to hit that marker. That feels really great. But Instagram isn't my driving force in my business. That is not where I see the most profit or the most sales and like the most traffic to my blog. And realizing like sometimes what works for someone else isn't going to work for you. Like even when it comes to social media.
Oh man, I keep every single time that I'm like, ugh, I need to get on Pinterest.
Yeah, but I do that all the time. Like I'm on Pinterest and I have successful pins on there, but I am not regular like some of my friends are. Like they have it scheduled like every day, this and this and this, where they schedule new pins every day, and that is one of my goals, is to start doing that more. But
me too, but I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. I'm like, great. I'll just deal with Pinterest, and I'm like, I know that it's so important, but there's an inner part of me that's like, I don't wanna.
Right? You're like, can't I already have all those followers?
Yeah, exactly.
I have it on Instagram. Can't it just convert?
But that's just because that as soon as you like find that one place, you can like hop people, you can push people to certain like things.
Oh yeah. Yes, you're like, that's what I've been doing lately with my YouTube channel. That's why I started my podcast interviews again, is I was like, ooh, I could make some money from YouTube ads. Let's get to that monetization. So that I'm just like,
yeah, right?
YouTube.
Exactly.
Or Instagram. Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're just trying to shove people everywhere as best as you can. Yeah.
Convince that's something that I've had to deal with a lot in terms of like comparison game or something, of like having to sell yourself every day, basically, is how I put it, to be like, why should you follow me? Why is what I offer worth it to see? Or why should you like my photo? Like that gets so exhausting, and it's okay to take a break.
Yeah, totally.
And help yourself recenter.
It is. That's the craziest part, is that like being a small business owner, like you don't realize how big of a salesperson you have to be.
I had no idea. I loved seeing designers like you and Tony and Make and Do crew and Sorella being like, oh, look at this amazing thing that they're doing. I could do that. Little did I know how much was involved.
It's so much. Yeah. And then even when you feel like you're doing everything, there's still so many other things that you could do. And I definitely find that so I have a couple girlfriends where like they have such amazing designs, but I feel like marketing isn't their first like go-to, and I think it really is a hindrance to not be able to make as many sales, because it's like So my dog.
The dogs agree.
Dogs agree. Just like you don't realize how important marketing is to be able to sell something, and like you can have the most amazing design out there, but if no one sees it,
Right.
and like like whenever I think of marketing, I'm like, if you feel like you are shouting from a rooftop and you are hoarse, you have not marketed enough.
Right? Exactly.
You're like, I am so goddamn tired, but it's just, and that's the other thing is like to tie back to like if like collaborations is that when people see you put in that work, they want to work with you.
Right.
And then
That
it becomes easier because then you make other people market your shit.
Exactly. And then you're like, oh, look at that. They've got 100,000 followers. Perfect. Yes, share this with everyone. I don't have to do anything. Woo!
Exactly. If you make those connections, in the long run, it can end up helping.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree. It's so exhausting having to be like, this is my pattern. It's coming out this time. This is my pattern. Do you want to buy it? This is my pattern. Look at me. Oh, wait, I have something important to share. Hello.
This is why I love pattern testers because I find that like they are like your own little marketing ninjas. Like,
Yes.
and then you can just have them market your own stuff. They become your own little like micro influencers, and then from there you can also use their photos. That's another thing. Make sure you have good photos, because then you can have other people market for you. Like I have like a bunch of like testers that I remember finding them when they were at like 200 followers, and then constantly like pushing them. And I don't want to say that it's like because of me they're like done so well, but it was like for being able to get onto my social media when I had a bigger following has helped them. And then they have done the exact same thing to other people that have tested for them. And it's like this beautiful like cascade effect.
Yes, I totally agree. Like that was something that I on a lot of my patterns because I haven't been doing garments for a while, but now I'm getting back into doing that again. I wasn't using testers, and I think that was something that was because the patterns didn't really need to be tested. It was okay, it's a washcloth. It doesn't need to be tested.
Yeah.
But now that I'm using testers more, I am like it's so nice that they'll do a lot of promotion for me, and then their followers like the same stuff they do. So if they like that, then they're going to follow me and get the pattern and do that. And it's so great when you have testers who take good photos and you can use them, like you said.
Yeah.
And that takes away a lot of your work to have to create content all the time.
You know what's really funny as we're talking about this? We're literally the company that people are reaching out to.
That's true. That's true.
Because you're talking about like the person who uses pattern testers, like every single time that I end up getting a new pattern tester, I like essentially interview them when they apply.
Right. Yeah, and that's what Kate and I from one of the Kate, that's what we were talking about in the podcast episode last week as well. And she mentioned testing for you, and
she's so wonderful.
Yeah, she's great. And just like, yeah, sometimes you don't realize that you're the company.
Yeah, and like Lion Brand is doing the exact same thing. If you can put up photos for Lion Brand is just going perfect. You have done my marketing for me. I will use my photos and give you some love back by like sharing it off. Oh yeah, it's a circle.
It's crazy, and it's so fun when that moment how like you work so hard to get something, and then if it happens, and even if you've gotten a bunch of rejections to get to that point, and then you just have that moment where you're like, wait a second, I'm at that point that I've wanted to for so long, and then it's that whole cycle of like, wait a second, now I'm at that point where people are looking at me to see what I'm doing, and it's crazy. And then how am I going to help other people get to this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so like an own connector by yourself.
It's crazy.
We're our own companies now. Who knew?
Yeah, it just takes time.
Yeah, it definitely takes time. Take a lot of time.
A lot of time. You don't realize how much time until you do it, and you're like, oh, why did I choose this for my life?
Yeah, and you realize like what your hourly wage is, and you're like, I'm fine. I'm okay.
It'll pay off someday.
It's entrepreneurship. It just happens.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing all of your tips. Like,
course.
It's been so fun. Like, you were one of my first podcast guests on the first season, and now getting to interview again. And you have so much great insight, especially because you work in marketing too. So
yeah, I do.
You know a lot about it.
I do. I work in advertising. I work in digital advertising, so it's kind of nice.
That is so nice. That is such a great. Like, I'm so glad that I took a bunch of business classes, like, as a business major. So, like, all of the stuff isn't as hard as knowing nothing and going into it.
Yeah. And, like, the majority of the stuff that I've learned is honestly through trial and error.
Yes. Trial and error.
You just gotta make mistakes, get messy.
Yes.
No, but thank you for having me on. It was wonderful to come back.
It was so much fun. And everyone who's watching, be sure to follow Chantel on Instagram, and I will include a link in the description because she's wonderful. And if you are nervous about knitting, try some of her patterns. They're designed for beginners and they're great. So you can knit too.
To the dark side.
Okay, I will talk to you later then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like it below if you enjoyed watching it, and hit the subscribe button if you never want to miss out a video from me, and also check out my other videos and tutorials on my channel. See you next time.